Do you like watching actual work get done by him? Because if so, this episode of Shift Points is for you. Thanks for joining. So something that we've been putting off that I had kind of honestly forgotten about a little, got so wrapped up in trying to get all this other stuff going so we could get the truck started, was the pretty big hole that we'd cut in the inner fender to clearance the radiator hoses whenever we first initially thought that we could do it with the stock thermostat housing. So today, Dad come out and pulled the inner fender out of the truck. So got that completely out of here. He was able to do it without pulling the outer fender, which we both kind of thought that we would have to pull the whole assembly. Somehow he got it out. He said it was probably easier if he had just pulled the whole fender, but here it is. So with that, he went ahead and got it out here. So because of the way the hole was cut, we just clearanced it for those hoses at the time. So he went ahead and pulled it out and cut it some more and got it into somewhat of a more standard rectangular shape. Instead of this, it was just kind of up and rounded. And if you look, this thing's got these radiuses in it and everything too. So to try and match all those radiuses and that kind of wonky shape wouldn't have really been reasonable. So he come out here and cut this out, made it into some more of a, got it up into this line that was already existed here. And then he went and got a piece of, we've got some like, it's like a step above like a card stock. It's like a cardboardy kind of material. And he took and made him a template out of that because that's a lot cheaper than metal. And so he went ahead, got that template made up, and now he's marking it up in onto this piece of metal that he can use. Should be perfect to use it for. And then we'll take it over here to the shear, kind of shear all this out. Maybe probably have to cut some of it with the vertical bandsaw, but still, we'll get it out of this next. What are you using?
These are slip rolls. And I have not got everything I need to do with it yet. Cut.
So you saw in the fender out there kind of how it has that one radius area. So that's what we're using these slip roll, or Dad's using these slip rolls for, is to try and get that first radius met, so we can get that into the piece of metal, and then he can start doing the rest of it. So if you saw on the template, you saw that we left the metal a little longer than the template. That was to account for the material that would be needed to fill the radius and then to go straight. So if we got a little too much at the bottom at the end, you can just, cut that off once you get there. So So each time he does it a little, he tightens it down, tightens those rollers up a little more. The tighter you get them, the more radius that you get into it.
See what shape center is.
Sounds good.
A little bit more in it.
Yeah. So after a variety of different metal shaping and cutting tools were brought out. Here, get some radiuses put into it. We've got it pretty close right here. So we're gonna go ahead and get it final shaped. It started to rain, so we had to come inside. It looked like we got all the grounding and stuff done anyway. So go ahead and he's gonna go ahead and get that put in place and get it tacked in, I guess. So got it all in here now. He's gonna take it outside and do a little grinding, clean it up. Guess we'll have to haze a little paint on it, keep it from rusting, and that'll be done. Wanted to quickly show off kind of after a little grinding and a little primer. We got it kind of wrapped up here. It started to rain again, so I think maybe tomorrow we'll get up here and clean it off a little more and get all that done. Maybe get it back in place, hopefully. So, another day down. The new video came out, and a little while after it came out, Dad called and said, "Son, we put up all that different stuff talking about what we were going to have to do to clearance the shocks and everything, and you didn't put it in there and show what we actually did." So I filmed it, I had everything ready, but apparently when I edited the video, I forgot to put it in it. So I want to go in here this week and show you guys kind of the final product and what all we ended up having to do. And I think I'll probably after this, I'll drop you a couple snippets of some of the machine work that Dad did to machine some of the space. He built some washers basically to kind of make sure that make sure those are captured. Go back and check and make sure I've got that footage still. But if I do, I'll drop those in there too, so you can kind of see some of that lathe work also. But let's get under here. The exhaust is kind of here now, but what we did on each side, and Dad took and ground the frame, kind of give us a notch here. It didn't get into the structure at all because this boxing's here, and we didn't get into the boxing. So he ground that notch there. Then on the top, we added 2 spacers here. Got that on that stud. So the stud's here. Put 2 spacers, and then these 2 the cup washer on this side, and this is one of the cup washers that was already on the other stud on the top. And then on the bottom did a similar deal. We actually got 3 spacers on the bottom, and this is one of the washers that he machined to capture in that bushing to have that there. So basically, that took exactly what we said we were going to do. Added those spacers in there, spaced this out. So along with that being spaced out and that notch being cut in the frame, it got us plenty of clearance on the body of the shock and the frame now, because that's what we were worried about hitting, was here and here. And we'll go over here to the other side, and it's the same thing, right? So we just matched it up exactly. This one was a little closer, so he's got a little bit more notch in this frame he ground, and then the 2 spacers, 3 spacers, and then the machined washer here, and the cupped washer up here. So we got that all there to clearance everything spaced out. All of that should work as it's supposed to now. So I will drop the video of some of the machine work he did when he was machining those spacers. I didn't get everything, just as we're doing other stuff, as one's doing something, the other one's doing something sometimes. So I didn't get the whole process, but I get some of it, so I'll drop those in now. So you saw us. We headed up to the Nap store, kind of our go-to that we've been going to for years and years. And we talked about doing the electrical to get the power line run from the battery to the starter is kind of how you should do it. Well, with those heavy gauge battery cables, we ended up not being able to do that, not being able to go directly to the starter. The cable's so heavy and there's so little room between the exhaust and the starter and all of the other stuff that's right here in this same area on this side and on the driver's side of this truck. We weren't able to run that there. So what we're going to run is the big battery cable. We're going to run it from the battery to the post that we have on the frame. And then we went up to the Nap store and got this 4 gauge battery cable. It's 18 inches long. We take that and we're going to run that, basically make a jumper from the stud over to the starter, because this is a lot easier to maneuver and a lot smaller. So we can actually run that over to the starter, clearance everything like we're supposed to. And it's going to be the same. I mean, it's going to be essentially the same thing, right? We were going to run a jumper from the starter over to that post. It's the same thing. We're just doing it in a different chain. So we'll have full 12 volts, constant 12 volts on that post and onto the starter. So that's exactly what we need it to be. And Dad's already under here, kind of figuring out where we're going to run it. And I'm going to pass this off to him and let him figure that out. Thank you. So one thing with changing where we were going to run the battery cable, when we ordered the battery cables, we ordered it for the size stud that's on the starter, not for the 3/8 stud that's on the frame. So we are going to have to open up that hole a little bit. And for anybody that's taken a battery cable and tried to drill it out, with a drill press, you will you will certainly, as soon as it bites, it will whip you to death. Try and break your whole hand. So Dad has a small vise that he uses. He's got that clamped up in there to hold that in place while we drill this out, so that we don't get whipped to death. So. No whipping to death. While Dad's working on the battery leads, I figured, since I was basically being useless standing up here, I would get in here and I ran that ground wire from that block of from the frame over there, the stud in the frame, run it in here and got it grounded to this ground strip in here. This is for all the gauges and everything. Light up here in the dome light and everything like that. All the grounds for the inside the cab come off of this ground plate right here. That makes it grounded to that stud onto the frame, which will also be directly grounded off of the battery and the block. So we went ahead and got that run. That's attached. So I'm going to also go over here because I think we can actually mark some stuff off this time. So we can, let's see here. Oh, I can finish that mark. I marked it off halfway last time. That's done. Fuel line done. Tighten exhaust. Nope. Let's go over to this one. Install fuel tank. Check. What else we got? Brakes. No, do that. Yeah, that's all that we can cross off for right now. Check that. Make sure. Battery cables. I'm gonna go ahead and check that off because this is basically done. Grounded rear post and inside. I have to ground that. I did run that wire back there with some sheathing, so now I'll do the same thing. I'll go back there, check the routing, and go ahead and get this checked. So I'm going to do a premature check here and go do that right now. Wanted to quickly show this. This is the big wire that goes from the front stud to this stud here. So that's going to go on the base. Gave myself a little. This is the bundle that goes up for all the wires for the fuel tank, sending unit, oil pump, or fuel pump, and the regulator itself. So all of those get a ground. This is one. It's just kind of a spare right now. Third brake light. I don't know if we're gonna have a. No, that's a lie. This is the right hand tail light. So that's gonna go to this here. So that'll go into this bundle and then go out to the tail light here. And then the rest of this bundle circles over and goes over to the left side, or yeah, left side. Sorry, I'm upside down. The left side of the truck, and then this bundle here are the power cables for it. This ground here goes to the license plate light. But all of that's grounded off this stud, and that wire there is what gives it the solid ground that it needs to supply the grounds for all of this stuff back here. So that is also wrapped up. Looks like Dad said a few minutes ago that it takes him 2 or 3 tries to route wires the way he wants them to. So he's up there finishing up the routing on the battery cables themselves. So we're really not far from having this electrical system really tied it up pretty well. We're gonna have to do some serious wire management, keep keep everything off the exhaust. Man, it just seems like everything on the right hand side we got the brake booster and the brake light switch and the bundles of wires that are coming down for all the wiring. It seems like everything's over on that left hand side. And on this side, it's kind of the same way. The exhaust is right there. We've got the battery cables coming through. We've got all the other grounds that are there. I don't know. There just seems to be a junction on the right and left side of this right there where everything narrows up with the exhaust, or just basically everything needs to run through there. The transmission cooler lines run on this side too, so there's a lot of that stuff. A lot of the old handy zip tie. That's going to be really handy, and a little bit of wire management to keep all that stuff up how it needs to be. So getting close. Since kind of like working on the shocks, since it's going to take Dad all day to run those battery cables, I guess I'll go ahead and start tightening up the exhaust manifolds. There's some gaskets already in here behind these, so I'm going to go ahead and tighten these up, and that'll have the exhaust manifolds up. All we got to do is tighten up the regular exhaust up to the manifolds, put some of the donuts in there, and then put the O2 sensors in the exhaust also. So, gonna go ahead and get those tightened up. So I'm under here checking out Dad's work, having to follow up on him. This is the jumper that goes over the starter from this. Here's the battery cable that runs down. Like he said, you have to kind of picture this as we have all of this stuff pushed back and held back into the frame farther away from the exhaust. And then these are the leads that go into the Ron Francis kit. These 3 here. And then we have the ground that comes out of the starter bolt, runs back to the battery, and then this braided cable here is going over to that stud in the frame. He's got all this basically locked down. We'll just have to pull it back, of course, but all the bolts are tight and everything. And then that lead that goes back. This stud has a bundle of wires that come off of it that go, one that goes up into the cab like I showed you guys earlier, that one that I just terminated. This one that goes to the back, that grounds off that stud and then goes forward for all the headlights and all this. And Dad had something he wanted me to read to you. He wants me to brag on camera, I guess. Let me see if I can get this pulled up. There we go. This is the most amazing work I've literally ever seen on any automobile ever. So that's what he told me to say. So look at that. It's amazing. He wasn't even here to hear me say that. That means he's not going to see it until it's actually in the video, which is even funnier. So I guess some of you probably noticed. I didn't notice, to be fair, but Dad was talking about it and said that since we've been working on that truck so much that he was a little embarrassed at how cruddy and rusty the transmission oil pan looked. Again, I didn't even pay any attention to it until he brought it up. So this morning he got under there. Today he got under there, pulled this off, and sandblasted it. And then we went to the high quality paint shop, Ace Hardware, picked up some primer and some rust stop black paint. So he's going to go ahead and blast a coat of primer on this and get it painted black. Is the oil pan black?
Oil pan's aluminum.
Aluminum, that's what I thought, yeah. So, yeah, I started to say they would match, but it's not. It's bare aluminum. So he's going to primer this, put it black, and then... No, I think it's okay. I think the black will be fine. That's what I do with everything else. Why not this? So he's gonna get that primered up and everything. So that'll be one thing. I'm gonna head out here to the paint booth so we can see how it's going with Dad. I see you brought out the paint box instead of the paint rack.
Yeah, it's not as apt to run.
That's fair. Looks like it's gonna get wet in the paint booth. Not too bad. Not bad. First coat, worst coat. So do another one. It should be perfect. So Dad's getting the paint put away in the paint cabinet. And one thing I want to talk to you guys about that we've been looking at, these trucks and a lot of trucks that you see, if you look at the cab into the bed, this line won't be kind of straight. The cab will kind of come kind of down like this and then intersect the cab of the truck, and the cab will be sitting flat and the bed will be running downhill. I was going to mark it on here so I kind of describe that a little better. So if you have the cab kind of sitting flat here, this is the cab, very official painting, and then the bed will be sitting kind of like this on, this is the rest of the doors and whatever, kind of be sitting like that and going down the road. And this truck was like that also. We just got done working on the 66 truck for a customer, and that truck's going to be coming back, by the way, so stay tuned for that. We're going to be putting some vintage air and power steering and things on that, so that's going to come in the next month or so. Hopefully once we get this thing started, we'll get that down here. But what we did on that truck is we raised it up kind of how far we needed, and then measured and made some spacers to go into the cross seals to get that line of the bed and the cab flat. So we're going to do the same thing on this truck. So I'm going to get under here in just a second, measure the width of those cross seals so Dad can make some spacers, and we'll put those on where the cross seals, there's some plates on the frame that those cross seals set in, and we'll space those up. So the front one will be the thickest one, of course, and then kind of the next one back will be a little thinner, because it'll be kind of a wedge shape, and we'll space both of those up, and we'll get this line on that bed straight with the cab itself. Just helps the look of the truck. You look at it and you think like, man, the frame looks bent on it. They're so jacked up in the back compared to the cab. So we're going to go ahead and get under here, measure these, and Dad's going to make the spacers, get those put in here, and then we can get the bed bolted down too. So just try and get those body lines straight, flat, and make it look nice. All right, I'm going to get under the truck here and show you what I'm talking about as far as where, and I know you guys understand how I'm spacing it or how we're going to space it, but let me show you kind of where we're going to space it. I was talking about those cross seals, and I think I can get the best shot of it out here maybe. And I wish I could get that light in there a little better. Let's try this. Okay, there we go. So you can see there's what it's called a cross seal. That's what that black part is. It runs horizontally with the truck. That cross seal gives support to the wood that's in the bed, and the whole bed itself. You can see that wooden block that's under that. So there's a flat landing that bolts onto the frame. So that flat is welded to the cross seal, and then there's a bolt that runs through that runs through the frame, and that's where everything gets bolted down, is at these cross seals. So that's that board right there we used to space it up to get the line right is 3/4 of an inch. So that's got the front of this bed spaced up that much. That's how much we ended up having to do it to even get it close. So that's got that space there. Dad's got a piece of aluminum that's 3/4 of an inch thick. We're going to cut it the same dimension as the flat part. So you see it's got that little wing that comes straight up. We're going to down at the bottom we're going to cut that plate the same dimension as that the bottom part of that cross seal. So then when we get under the truck, so there's multiple ones of these that run the length of the bed. So we can see it much better now. So in this one, this is the next one back. So of course, since that's kind of a wedge shape, when you lift the front of it up, you're going to have this gap here between the cross seal and the frame. luckily we again have another piece of aluminum that's exactly the same thickness as that, so we can get that cut to that dimension, slide it in place, set the bed down. It's going to keep the bed held up how it's supposed to be, where it should be, and then we can bolt it down with the bolt that's run through the frame here. So we'll do that, get everything spaced up like it's supposed to be, and that'll get that line right. Quickly, I'll run over here and show you this piece of aluminum that Dad is working on. He's got it in the horizontal bandsaw here. So you can see this is that three-quarter piece of aluminum. He's going to cut that the width that he needs out of it. One side of that, or one part of that block, will be 2 9/16. That's the width of the block, and then the actual, I guess, whatever dimension you want to call it, not thickness, but the other width of that block is going to be 2 3/4. So it's a pretty healthy blocks we're going to be putting under here. Give plenty of support on the bed and everything like that. So that should get those cut, get them put together, and get them put under there and get everything how it's supposed to be. So I went ahead and got the exhaust manifold bolts tightened up. I started tightening those the other day. I started talking about that right after I talked about it a few days ago. And Dad reminded me that we really need to put some anti-seize on those. That anti-seize will help them from binding and breaking, because these are kind of notorious to break, especially these stock bolts, kind of notorious to break off into the cylinder head. I prefer that not to happen. So this morning, backed them all back out, put anti-seize on them, because we're just for the initial fire up, we're just going to use the stock ones. We'll probably find a set of ARP ones and put in for the to bolt these up before we run it for a long time. But just to get everything started, make sure everything's good, we'll use these. So I went ahead and got all those tightened up on both sides. So you can see that's ready to go now. We'll have to tighten up, put in the donuts and tighten these up in here. And then that'll have this section of the exhaust basically tidied up. And then all we've got to do is just get some turn downs there on the back, so when we do fire it up, it's not blowing the exhaust right into the rear end housing. So check another thing off. I did come over here earlier. I'd forgotten to mark this off the other day. This is the breaker tension spring. So we went ahead and got that done because that's all done in there. I'm not going to mark off tightening exhaust just yet, just because it'd be a little premature. I'll mark it off halfway too, like I did the other day. So it's halfway done. The header, the exhaust manifolds are tightened up, but not the rest of it. So, yeah, we're working on this right now. So once we get those spacers in, we can bolt this down, and that can be checked off. So, and we're making really big gains in the past couple videos, especially on getting a lot of this stuff crossed out. So Dad's working on getting, when we did the cuts on these, that block that we used wasn't exactly square, so we cut them. It didn't cut the pieces exactly square, so he's milling these down. Ow! Hurt me. Milling these down so that they'll be exactly the same. So, working on that now. So we got the spacers in the bed here. See if we can see them a little better. Might have to get under here, and there we go. So you can see this is the spacer that's in there. We're gonna have to get some longer bolts to put in there to get it bolted down. We put the spacers in here also, so everything is spaced up, and I'll try and show you on the video here kind of what we were going for as far as getting that spaced up. So you can see, if we get in here to the side, that truck and the bed, or the cab of the truck and the bed, are running parallel with each other. So that's what we were going for. So I'm going to have to be out of town for the next few days. I'm going to leave the camera with Dad, let him video some of this stuff that he's going to try and get knocked out real quick. So for this week, I'm going to say that's all we're going to have. I know I've said it so many times, but I really think that we'll fire this thing up in the next video. I'm believing in myself this time. So thanks everyone for watching Shift Points. Really appreciate it. I'm going to wrap up here. I'm going to go back in the back with Wynn and Jackson, and we're going to record that first podcast for Shift Points. So if you like racing and you like anything with the steering wheel and you want to hear people talk about it, come and join us. By the time that this video comes out, that should already be out also. So thanks. Make sure to follow us on Facebook and on Instagram. And if you like what you see, comment, like the video, and make sure to hit that subscribe button at the end of the video. It really helps us out a bunch. So thanks everyone. See you next time.